Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. So in this video I'm going to be propagating my Chusquea Gigantea bamboo here. So this bamboo is quite a rare and unusual bamboo. All the bamboos of this species went to flower around the whole world at the same time. The parent plants all died and all that's left is the seedlings. So this is one of the seedlings. This one's about 3 years old now. And what I want to do is propagate it and make some more plants. Now this is quite a difficult plant to propagate, especially once it becomes mature, because the culms on this bamboo are very large and they also root very deep. And so to dig them out you have to dig a couple of foot deep to get the whole culm out and all its roots. So propagating it whilst it's small is the best way to do that. So what I'm going to do with this one, I'm going to split it in half and double it into 2 plants, and then I'm going to see if I can get some small culms off it and keep them in small pots. And if I can keep some plants small and keep propagating those small ones, it'll be easier in the future if I want to propagate more, because these 2 larger plants I'm going to plant out, one in my parents' garden and one in my own garden. So first of all we'll have a look at the root system. So this particular plant has been sizing up a lot recently. The new culms are much bigger than the old ones, so you can see here the old ones are some of these really small ones in the middle. They're really quite hard to sow, but around the edge we've got some lovely new big ones coming up. These are the ones from last year, already quite large. And then as I rotate round you'll see we've got some new ones coming up for this spring, but some of the ones for this spring, particularly these ones that are just starting to bud right down here, look like they're going to be extra large and going to be even bigger than the previous ones. So what I'm looking to do here is I'm just going to have a look around the root system, see how all the culms are kind of connected through the rhizomes. They shouldn't be running too far because this is a clumping variety, but there is a little bit of movement on them. But what I want to find is a good place where I can split it in 2. So looking at this, there's quite a cluster around this side here. Turning it around, there's a bit of a cluster here, but there's a gap there. So that's the position I want to cut it on to get this plant split in half. So because this plant is still quite young, all I need to do is get a spade and cut it through with a spade. If this plant has really thick rhizomes, I might need to use a root pruning saw for it. So that's the plant now split in 2. As you can see, some of the new rhizomes for this spring are going to be much bigger, probably 3 or 4 times larger than last year's. So we've got some really nice shoots that are going to come up soon. Now doing this, it will stunt the growth of the plant a bit. It's going to have half the root system to support those new shoots. So I won't expect it to size up quite as well this year. But if I left it in the same pot, it would then start struggling because there wouldn't be enough space for the plant to grow. So this will help it in the long term. That's 2 halves now taken off. But what I can see here is I have damaged some and they've got a little bit of root system on them. So these ones I'm going to propagate up and put in some pots. And I'm also going to look around, see if I can find some younger, smaller sections which haven't been broken off yet, and see if I can propagate them up into a smaller pot and keep them as a constant supply if I want to keep propagating this plant. So looking at this plant here, I've got a few good examples. So they are a bit bigger than I was hoping for, but they're right on the edge, so they're easier to take off. Unfortunately, all the smallest ones are right in the middle of the pot, and so they're really quite hard to get to. But I've got some culms here. You can see this one's already a little bit loose. It's also an advantage, this one, because there's not a lot of leaves. So this is the culm I'll be taking out. It's last autumn's, it's still all in bud, so even if it has a reduction of its root system, it doesn't have a lot of leaves that need to be supported. So I'm just going to go in with the trowel here. I'm going to try and get out as much as I can of this root system, because the more root system it has, the bigger chance it is to survive. So there we go. We've got a nice root system on that one there. We've also got some nice big shoots that are coming up, so this should hopefully survive quite well. And I'm just going to do the same again on this one here, where you can see there's a loose section and it's got a lot of these roots coming down. I'm going to see if I can tease it out and get a decent bit of roots off it as well. So you can see there we've got some roots. This one not as good, but we'll pot that up and hopefully that will also survive. So I'm also going to try and get this one out here. It's towards the edge, so I'm just going to leave it away, see if I can separate. So we can see there how it's coming off with the rhizomes and the roots coming down. So what I'm going to do is get some secateurs. I'm just going to cut it off at this section here as the rhizomes are coming out, and we should hopefully get a few nice new shoots coming off. That's a really nice bit of rhizome. The rhizomes are a really important part of the bamboo. That's where it stores most of its energy. So if you can get some rhizome with root, you get a good chance of that surviving. So just go in as far back as I can reach with the secateurs, cut that main rhizome, tease it out, try and get some extra roots if I can. And there we have a nice section of rhizome with also a load of roots. So what's going to happen this year is this main stem, which came up last autumn, is going to leaf up and get even more leaves, and then down towards the base here we're going to have 2 new shoots that come up. So now I've got these separated, what I'm going to do is pot them up. So the 2 biggest ones, what I'm going to do is put one back in its original pot, another one in a slightly larger pot, and then 3 offcuts that I have, which look like they're going to grow quite well, I'm going to pot them up into pots as well, and just keep them in slightly smaller pots, keep them at a small size, and probably divide them yearly if I want to make more plants, or just keep them small in case I do want to propagate them in the future. Now when it comes to soil, what I've done is I've just got some of my own topsoil and mixed it with some rich multi-purpose compost. Bamboo likes a lot of water, so it needs to have a really good moisture retentive soil, but it also needs to be free draining. My soil is mostly a sandy soil, so it's very free draining. There's a little bit of silt and clay in it, but it's mainly sand, so it's nice and free draining. And having a bit of normal soil as well as compost adds some more micronutrients, but also when you transplant it back into your own garden, it's got more used to growing in normal soil instead of being in pure organic based compost, so that it will adapt slightly better. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and plant these up. Now looking at this one for example, this is the original centre of the plant, and all the new rhizomes are pointing out this way towards the edge. So what I want to do is make sure this is at the new edge and all the new rhizomes can grow out into the new compost, and it's not going to get caught against the edge of the pot straight away. So it'll be a similar process with the small divisions here, but I just need to think more about the height of the plant. So I need to make sure all these rhizomes are underground, but they need to be quite close to the surface. Bamboo rhizomes like to be near the surface, they don't like to be deep underground, but at the same time they don't want to be really close to the surface that they get exposed to the elements. So I just want to bury them probably about 1 inch underground. Just going to make sure the soil is distributed between all the roots, and it's gently pressed down and firm so that there's a bit of support so this column stays upright. But I don't want to push down too hard and compact the soil, otherwise it'll lose the air spaces and it'll be difficult for the roots and the rhizomes to grow through. So I'm just going to gently pack it down there, give it a bit of a shake and a tamp down. Just going to give it a tiny bit more soil, just to raise the level ever so slightly. And that's all I need to do for that one. So I'm just going to go ahead now and do the same with the rest. So that's everything now potted up. I've got 3 nice small divisions that I can use for propagating in the future. I've got my 2 larger plants which are now going to grow even bigger because they've got more space in the pots. And I also have these which broke off with very few roots attached. And what I'm going to do with these is I'm just going to put these in water, and I'm just going to see if any new roots grow and if these can survive. But if I put these in pots, they probably dry out really quickly and die. So this is just an experiment with these. But that's everything potted anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep these well watered, keep them in a sheltered position. Now I've done this in February when the plants are dormant, but they're just about to start growing for the new year, so they're just waiting to go. So they're going to be really actively putting out their roots in the next few weeks, and then when it warms up in spring they'll send up their shoots. So that's all for now. I'll see you guys at the end of the video and we'll see how these divisions have done. So it's now 7 months later and time to end this video. As you can see, the 2 divisions at the back have done really well. They've upsized slightly this year, but what they've really done is filled in the pots nicely, so each one is probably the same size as they were before they were separated, or if not even larger. And we've got the 3 divisions as well that were individually divided. The one in the middle has survived and is sending up a new shoot. The other 2 are technically alive as they keep trying to grow new leaves, and the stems are still green, but they're not really growing any roots, and they haven't produced enough leaves to really photosynthesize. They just keep producing buds, and then the buds keep dying off. So these 2 stems are probably going to die this winter, even though they've just been able to cling on to life over the summer. And then the cuttings I took, none of them took. There was a tiny bit of root growth, but there just wasn't enough root growth to really establish a new plant, and they all died off. So the reputation that they are hard to propagate seems to be quite true. It looks like they don't store a lot of energy in their shoots, and even their rhizomes it seems to struggle, because a couple of these divisions did have quite good rhizomes on them, but they just didn't propagate well. I think the problem was I was using quite new shoots. These shoots were very young when they were separated, so they didn't have much leaves of their own. I think what it really needs is some old mature culms to then power the energy for the new ones, or you need to separate multiple culms at a time with lots of rhizomes and lots of roots. So it is possible to propagate them through division. It's just a bit more tricky than most bamboos. The other reason it will become difficult as these get larger is they're very deep rooted and the culms are quite large, so you need to really divide them whilst they're young. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to plant one of these in my parents' garden, other one in my garden, and the one that survives in the bottom here, that's just starting to shoot up now, that one I'll keep small and I'll keep dividing off of that and try and keep divisions going and keep them quite small as well, so that they're easy to divide. Once they become large culms, they'll be quite hard to propagate. So that's all for this video. Just wanted to show you my experimenting with the propagation of the Chusquea Gigantea. Certainly through division, if you use plenty of culms, it's easy, but using individual culms, there's just not the energy required in the division to keep it going and start a new plant. So that's all for now. If you want to see how these bamboos develop over time, please subscribe, and I'll be including these in my yearly bamboo updates so you can see how these bamboos do once they're in the ground and how this one in the pot develops over the years as well.